So we will start now. Everyone can hear me, right? To your hands, okay, good. So thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Abdelrahim Khairi, and I'm the Membership and Events Officer at Housing Europe. Housing Europe is the European Federation of Public, Cooperative, and Social Housing. From the team, I'm also joined by Dara Turnbull, Research Coordinator, Sébastien Garnier, Innovation and Project Manager, and Clara Maffei, Junior Project Officer.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thank you. It is a pleasure for me to be the moderator for the webinar. Before we get started, I would like to make some housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the presentations, please type them into the chat box. We will bring them up during the Q&A session. My colleague, Dara, will take care of this. The webinar is recorded, so we can share the content on our website for others to benefit from. For the speakers, please get ready to share your screen while presenting. I do have your presentation in case you need or you encounter technical problems. Last note, for all attendees, please make sure your mic is muted at all times, except for those who are invited to speak. To start with, let me give you an idea about the webinar topic on indicators for circular economy, which is one of the HOUSEFUL Project activities. Today, different frameworks, assessment tools, certification schemes, indicators, and are being used by housing providers and building partners in order to measure, monitor, and manage a more efficient use of scarce resources. Housing providers are also looking for synergies to increase circularity levels in combination with affordability, durability, safety, health, and comfort within the residential environment. The webinar will offer an opportunity for both speakers and participants to explore the tools and initiatives that are used to develop circular indicators and methodologies in order to help housing actors to achieve their ambitious goal. So now, without further ado, we will turn the mic over Daniel Cheka. Daniel is a researcher in sustainability at Leitat. It is also a HOUSEFUL project partner. Daniel, in a nutshell, please tell us about HOUSEFUL Project. Go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Abdelrahim. Yes, I'm Daniel Cheka from Leitat. I'm going to present you the HOUSEFUL Project.
Perfect.
Okay. HOUSEFUL Project is an innovative circular solutions and services for the new business opportunity in the European housing sector. So I'm going to introduce you the project with the general project information, and then we can see the background and then the main goal and the scope of the project. First of all, the HOUSEFUL Project has a 54-month duration, and there are 16 partners involved from 8 countries, from Ireland, Belgium, France, Spain, Italy, Netherlands, Austria, and one partner also from Israel. And the background is that the current housing sector follow a linear procedure in which we take raw materials and then we manufacture those raw materials, design engineering for the building, construction, operation, and then demolition. But this linear procedure generates problems that are from 10 until 15% of building materials is wasting during construction. Then around 50% of residential dwellers report living in too much space. From 20 to 40% of energy in existing buildings can be profitably conserved. And then we can see that there is a large amount of energy consumption per capita in the residential sector in Europe, and then around 173 kilograms of food waste production per person and year, and it's externally managed, and around 80 from 80 to 150 liters wastewater production at household level per capita and day, and around 54% of demolition materials landfill, while some countries only landfill 6%. So the main goal and scope of HOUSEFUL Project is that project develops an integrated system service composed of different solutions for co-created by stakeholders in the current housing value chain. So the HOUSEFUL service will aim at the circular management and efficient use of water, waste, energy, and material that are the vectors that in which we can develop the solutions selected. And finally, those solutions will be integrated in a software as a service, enabling the replication of proposed circular solutions offered to stakeholders as a circular economy business opportunity. So to demonstrate that those solutions developed on the HOUSEFUL project are can be profitable and work in a real scenario, we evaluate and integrate those solutions in 4 demo buildings. Those are the front runner buildings. 2 of them, Demo 1 and Demo 2 in Spain, and Demo 3 and Demo 4 in Austria. All of this is external advice with and collaboration with the CCAT board. And after all of this, these solutions will be integrated in the software as a service that will help us to replicate this methodology in 10 follower buildings at the end of the project. So within this project, we challenge 5 main challenge, and the one is the redesign the new business model. Then, in order to break the linear procedures to a circular economy that help us to reduce all these impacts that we've seen. The second challenge is the need of a robust, standardized, reliable, and day-to-day market usage methodology to quantify the degree of circularity. So this is the key point that we are going to see here in this webinar. And then the challenge 3 is to guarantee the environmental, economic, and social feasibility of the circular existing and innovative solutions in order to co-create the service by applying the life cycle thinking approach. Challenge 4 is overcoming the cultural and social barriers, also very important, for the effective co-creation and acceptance of the new circular economy business opportunities. And finally, the challenge 5 is providing policy recommendations, guidelines, and tools able to enable the current framework conditions in housing sector. So with all of this, we want to achieve goals, and that are the main outputs expected from this project are the 30% reduction of waste destined to landfills, 50% improvement of non-primary energy consumption and energy efficiency by passive and active measures. Also, best selection of materials for efficient processes and procedures and passive measures of energy, minimizing 50% of bio-waste, with a higher of 95% recovery by efficient separation and biogas production.
1 minute.
Then recycling. Sorry?
1 minute, please.
Okay, yeah, I'm finishing. Recycling more than 90% of rainwater, grey water, and black water for production of reclaimed water and biogas. High quality compost from estate, and an alternative CHP from biogas at home level. And that's all. It's a quick introduction to the project, but you can also send me an email or ask me for more information if you are interested about it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for the introduction on the HOUSEFUL Project. So, moving along our agenda, allow me to introduce the next speaker, Josefina Lindblom, who is working at the European Commission for DG Environment in the unit of Sustainable Production. Josefina has been responsible for the work on sustainable buildings since 2011 and has, among other things, managed the recent development of levels. That is a common framework for the assessment of the environmental performance of buildings. Today, she will be sharing with us her inputs from the EU perspective on levels and indicators. Josefina, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Do you hear me now? Yeah, good. Thanks a lot for the introduction. I will go straight to my presentation. Let's see if I can share that with you.
Yes.
Is it up now? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, yes, I work for DG Environment at the European Commission, and I will be talking about levels today. Let's see. So, I will talk about levels. This is an initiative, a tool that the European Commission has been working on and been developing since 2015, together with a large number of building professionals. We started in 2015, and we are going to publish the final version of this exciting tool this summer. So it's very timely to talk about this now. This is a tool that is to assess, it's a framework to assess and report on sustainability of buildings throughout the full life cycle. So we're really trying to look at the full life cycle, but doing it in such a way that it is not overcomplicated, and we're not throwing 30, 40, 50 indicators at the user, but we try to reduce it and keep it as simple as possible, but still picking up on the most important aspects throughout the life cycle. And the idea is really to tackle or to target the mainstream market. There are many different certification schemes and other tools out there which can do a great job, but more for the top runners, for the high-end market, I would say. Here we're talking about taking something which is niche today to become the new normal. So levels has been developed, it has been consulted on, and it has been tested by, we have feedback from 80 projects throughout all of Europe. So it has really gone through quite an extensive collaborative process, and that has been a great experience. I want to stress the life cycle aspect of levels, and I also want to stress that we see it as a common language. So it is not a certification scheme, right? It is not something which will enter any kind of competition with other schemes. On the contrary, many of the bigger certification schemes in Europe have been part of developing levels because they want to be comparable on a number of key indicators, core indicators, and that's where they see the importance of levels. They also see that if they align themselves with the focused indicators of levels, they will be sure that they are actually sort of in line with policy that will come from the European Commission. So not a certification scheme, we're not setting benchmarks. This is a common language. Okay, and now So what areas are we covering with levels? First of all, we are covering 3 areas which are really all linked to resource use and hence environmental impact. So that's whole life carbon, so energy, it is water, and it is materials. And there we have waste included as well, of course. We also have 3 areas which are more linked to the quality and the value of the building. So that's health and comfort, resilience to climate change, and life cycle costing. So in those 6 areas, we have indicators. And I have been reassured that you will receive this presentation afterwards so that you can have a closer look at it. But the 6 areas I just mentioned in the previous slide, you see them here in the column to the left. So you see macro objective 1, macro objective 2, etc. So the first one is the one on energy, indeed, or carbon, you could say. And then on the horizontal line, you see which indicators we are using for that. Under the macro objective 2, we have materials. And then you see which kind of indicators we're using for that to the right of it. So that's how we go along. So as I said, we have indicators in carbon, material, water. Then we have the health and comfort, where we look at indoor air quality and thermal comfort range. And then we have cost and value, rather. So the macro objective 5 is, as I mentioned before, resilience to climate change, where we look at time out of thermal comfort range, just as we did under the macro objective 4. But here, we do it instead of today, we do it for future climate scenarios, so 2030 and 2050. The last one is really on life cycle costing and value creation of the building. I would like to draw your attention to indicator 1.2, which is on the top line and the second one. So there you see life cycle global warming potential, hopefully. And that is something that I would like to continue to talk a bit about. We see this as a key indicator. You also see to the very right, before I leave this page, you see indicator 2.4, which is a life cycle assessment. Now, that was something that we hadn't planned to include because, as you may recall, a few minutes ago, I said we only want to use this for to reach the mainstream market. And that we know we're not going to do with an LCA. So this is something that has been put in to show the vision, the goal of where we want to go, but it's not something that we expect a standard user of levels to focus on. But the indicator 1.2, I'd like to go on with. Because that is the whole life carbon. And there are so many, we think it's a very important one, and we think it's something that is really being captured in many ongoing initiatives. I want to draw your attention to the GAP report from the UNEP that came out at the end of last year, which focuses or zooms in, I should say, on the greenhouse gas emissions from material production globally. We see that over 40% of that material-related CO2 comes from construction. The International Resource Panel, just a few months later, came out with an interesting report showing that in different parts of the world, you could do a great amount of reduction of this material-related CO2 if you put in material efficiency strategies. In particular for construction, in G7, they claim that by 2050, with the right strategies, we can reduce this material-related carbon emission with over 80%. And now, very recently, the EEA, the European Environment Agency, has done a similar exercise, and they show that this is above 60%. So, regardless of the exact number, we see there's huge potential there. Referring to the World Green Building Council, which is also focusing in very much the last year and will continue to do so on embodied carbon. So, this is the new part of the life cycle that we are trying to really put focus on with as well. I wanted to give you some national initiatives also, give you a flavor of what's happening. Finland is moving ahead with with whole life carbon assessments. They are starting already this year to use it in public procurement, and in 2025 they will have limit values in their building regulation on whole life carbon. E+, C-, the French initiative, which will be used in legislation as well, where building projects will have to report on whole life carbon. In Sweden, we also see what they call climate declarations when constructing buildings. They start by using it for new buildings. So by 2022, new building projects will have to report on whole life carbon. And they are now looking into, should they broaden this? Should they do it also for renovation projects? Should they include limit values? Or is it enough with reporting? I just want to say that, well, maybe I have another one. Yes, this is the very exciting LETI initiative from London as well, which goes into great detail on this. Just want to say that what we see from all these initiatives is that just by starting to require information on whole life carbon, projects react and start to focus on this, and they try to do better. It becomes sort of an important performance criterion for them, even if there's not any limit values yet. This is really being we can see a change in the market on those markets where these initiatives are sort of happening. So levels, what is it going to be used for? We see it as it can link circular economy and a carbon neutral Europe through lots of different kinds of initiatives at the EU level for sure, whether it's sustainable finance work or green public procurement or anything else. We want to support member states to integrate life cycle thinking into building codes and their own procurement. We believe that if we use the same kind of methodology, the same language, even if we use different initiatives, then we can improve comparable life cycle data, enabling learning and benchmarking. We want, as I said in the beginning, to support normal building projects to consider life cycle in a slightly easier way than what is available to the market. And also then certification schemes assuring their work reflects European policy by aligning themselves with levels. And we see how many of them are doing this right. Also for investors, I wanted to finish off with what we have understood in the development of levels, because investors have been in part of that development as well. They see many of the indicators as really useful for them as well, whether it is on health and comfort, buildings being adaptable, flexible, looking at the service life, the obvious ones with energy and water consumption, but also life cycle costing, and interestingly enough, the embodied carbon piece, the indicator that I sort of focused in on here during my 10 minutes for future legislation. Okay, this is the email address where you can find us. Contact me. It will be me reading it, and you can receive more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Josefina Lindblom. We will now move to the next presentation by Michael Ritzen, Senior Researcher at Zurich University of Applied Science, a research team, Smart Urban Redesign, and responsible for the program line Circular Buildings Technology. Michael, based on your experience, my question to you is, why do we need a methodology for circular evaluation? Now I give you the floor. You have 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you, and welcome everyone to my presentation. I hope you see it.
Yes.
Correct, that's good. So why do we need it, and what are we doing in our research group actually in this field? That's what I'm going to present in the next 10 minutes. It's a full presentation, 20 slides, so I will go very briefly over them. And in two of our research projects, we're addressing this issue, evaluation of circularity in the built environment. The projects are Drive Zero and the Super Circular Estate. And just briefly the background, and I think that the previous speaker already explained, very nice, challenges we have in the built environment, huge environmental impacts, and that's of course that we are focusing on decarbonization of the built environment. But this built environment decarbonization is it's mainly looked at from an operational energy perspective. That is only part of the story. And of course, now we have the other ambition within the Netherlands and the European Union to work towards this circular economy. In 2050, at least in the Netherlands, we went completely, fully circular. And by 2030, we already want to be circular by 50%. And that has huge implications for the built environment, because the current demolition practice in the Netherlands, and these numbers are comparable worldwide, is that we hardly reuse or recycle any material. We say that we recycle about 95%, but most of this is being downcycled. And only 3% of demolition materials go back into the building construction. And this is how it looks like everywhere around Europe. Some of these pictures are taken in the Netherlands. Some of these pictures are taken abroad, in Denmark, for example. Everywhere we see the same. We see a lot of demolition materials just going into these garbage bins, and they're downcycled. This is the largest natural reserve in the Netherlands. It's called the Oostvaardersplassen. And if you look closely, this is what happens with our demolition debris. You can see in all these pictures, you can see the materials from the construction industry going back into a natural resource. So in our first project that I want to present, it's called the Superlocal project. We had 4 of these high-rise buildings, and they were obsolete. They needed to be demolished. We said, let's not demolish them traditionally, but let's apply these 9R model and see if we think from a material perspective materials. So what we did is we made a full inventory of all these apartment buildings. We have more than 10,000 QR codes. We labeled everything. We know exactly what was in these apartment buildings. Then we started designing different buildings. Amongst others, we designed these 3 buildings. We want to make reuse components from these apartment blocks in the realization of these dwellings, and we started making the first calculations, and we said, okay, if you're only looking at embodied energy on the demolition potential from this apartment building, we can have a 54% saving. Moreover, we calculated the 3 different dwellings, and here you can see the green bars. That's the superlocal solution, compared to the blue bars that are the baseline solutions, that you can have tremendous embodied energy savings. But mainly, I call it single cycle circular solutions. The materials are reused only once or recycled only once. So that is what we challenged ourselves in the Drive Zero project. How can we realize renovation solutions based with this thought of reusing materials from the demolition over solution. We said focus on reusing and recycling.
I don't know if you are losing your microphone, but just if you can come closer to the microphone, maybe this is the problem.
Okay. I hope it's better now.
Yes, yes.
Now we said we're going to reuse and recycle locally available materials by urban mining. It's the most important step. Then we're going to use renewable, environmentally friendly materials and use bio-based engine materials. So to have this life cycle energy, have it lower compared to traditional retrofit solutions. And what is then a circular deep retrofit or a circular deep renovation? The first thing is you have to have a full understanding on the definition. We said you cannot speak about a circular solution if it's based still on fossil fuels. So it has to be based on 100% life cycle renewable energy. So meaning you provide enough renewable energy for the operational energy as well for the employees. Moreover, all your materials should be part of infinite technical or biological cycles. And how are you going to address that? In 7 demonstrated that we have in the project, and how are you going to calculate? That's what we did last month. We have finalized our first report now, focusing on one hand, these environmental impact indicators that were very clearly mentioned by the previous speakers, body carbon indicators, but we now need to make the next step to combine environmental indicators with criteria. What we did is 4 main criteria.
We are losing Michiel, I think.
Again, yeah.
Hello? I'm back?
Yes. Yes. Just the audio sometimes is not so clear, but now it seems to be better.
Okay. So we combined the environmental impact indicators as they were mentioned by the previous speakers with design for disassembly criteria. Maybe someone can turn off his microphone. I see the logo. Can you turn off the microphone? What I wanted to mention in this report is that you can see that the embodied energy ranges between a 1.5 and a 7.6 gigajoule per square meter of the benchmark. And what we now have to do in the next step of this project is combine this with the operational energy and work towards a complete lowering of the life cycle energy. Then what we did was we combined those numbers with the building circularity indicator that is already existing. It was developed by the MacArthur Foundation and ALBA Concepts. And what we did is we investigated the differences. If you look at it from a mass perspective, that's mainly being addressed at this moment in a number of projects, but mass only is part of the whole story. We should be calculating embodied energy, operational energy, and embodied and life cycle carbon or CO2 levels as well. What we see in the projects that there is a recoverable material potential between 20 and 85%. So that means that if we rethink our projects correctly, we can have a significant lowering of embodied energy. But the report very clearly shows a necessity of criteria to indicate to what extent the design component in of itself and to its context. And I think looking back at the previous year, it's tremendously difficult to assess. If we are focusing and working towards a real circularity indicator, we have to focus not only on these embodied aspects as we are doing now, but we really need to make the step towards the assessment of components, of products, and how they fit in their context. And for instance, as a very easy example, we were having a discussion, are you assessing the reuse potential of a facade element or of a part of this facade element like a window? And that are really tremendously important aspects. Looking forward, we're now in the phase of the next task in our project. We are collecting a number of monitoring technologies on circularity, and here you input. If you have technologies, we are really looking forward.
Michiel, can you repeat that again? We are losing you. Sorry.
That this project, we are so we made this first step with the baseline calculations, and now we are making the next step in collecting these monitoring technologies, methodologies on circularity, where everyone is invited to provide us with input in our project, either by posting something on the website or the forum, of CCHE or send a direct email to one of our project. And with that, I would like to conclude and thank you for your attention. I hope
Thank
it in here.
Thank you, Michael, for this presentation. So before moving to the next presenter, I remind all participants to write their questions on the chat box so we can bring them up during the Q&A session. Our next presenter is Paul Quinn. Paul is currently leading on Clarion Housing Group's estate regeneration projects, including 3,000 home Merton regeneration project in the South London. Today, Paul Quinn will bring a testimony from a large social housing provider working at the end of the building chain. Paul, the floor is yours. You have 8 minutes.
Thank you very much. First thing to say is, I'm sure many of you people on this call are much more experts about this than me. I approach this from a sort of perspective of someone who's actually responsible for built environment projects and getting these things built out. But my interest, of course, is in circular economy and making sure that we can build that in as much as possible as we go through. I'll just begin really with the quote from Jan Gehl. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. This is the principles we try to apply in all our regen schemes. What I like about this quote is he talks about people and spaces and then buildings, and in that order. And that's a very important part of the approach we're trying to adopt here. I manage the large regen schemes within Clarion Housing Group. We are a very large landlord here in the UK. We own 125,000 homes, and we aim to build around 50,000 new homes in the next 10 years or so. I manage the regeneration project, so this is existing stock, so all the homes that we own that need improvement, so I manage that, and that's currently around about £4 billion worth of programme. So the key to our approach around circular economy is we're very keen to try and embed it in as many aspects of our regeneration programs as possible. And the starting point for that then was producing our own circular economy strategy. This is available online if anyone wants to have a look at it. It's from a very practical perspective. What I'm looking for is how do we take the concept of circular economy and how do we build it into delivery? And more importantly, how do we build it into the long operational life of our buildings and our neighbourhoods? So the principle really is circular economy's DNA. Now, my daughter works in genetics, and she always hits me using the term DNA in this way. But basically, what we're trying to do is to ensure that we build circular economy into as many aspects of our business as possible. So that's right from the very start, the principles of why we work the way we do and what we're trying to achieve. Through our procurement route, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So obviously, we're a very large landlord. We spend a lot of money, so we have quite a lot of buying power here. So we have an opportunity to shape the market, delivery, operational, and of course then end of life. What do we do with buildings when they and other infrastructure when it comes to end of life? So we work off 3 main principles. So you'll be very familiar with a lot of this, but first one really is around designing out waste and standardizing the way we build our buildings and our areas out to minimize that waste. These last 2 points are the more interesting ones, I think. So designing buildings that are adaptable. So hopefully the buildings that we're currently building, and the building on the right-hand side there is one that's on site right now. This is one I look after in South Wimbledon in London, are adaptable. So I'm hoping those buildings are still on their feet and still serving social housing in 100 years from now, in which case they will have been modified many times in their life, many new systems introduced. So how do we design them to allow that to happen cleanly and quickly and without too much impact on the structure? And this last one really is, this is a conversation we're having with quite a lot of our design teams at the moment, to want them to think about buildings as a series of components rather than a single structure on its own. So how do we design it in such a way that it could be taken apart later, those materials reused, perhaps in other structures or in completely different ways? So just before they start to design anything, how do we anticipate the end of life for the building itself? The second principle is around social value. Again, this is a sort of stretching what maybe most people think of as circular economy to think about how we engage with the communities we work with and other stakeholders. How do we promote a sharing economy, and looking at influencing behavior around recycling and waste within the home itself. So it's a very important part of our whole approach. And then this third one, perhaps is more expected, really, is around waste and the waste hierarchy. Demolition for maximum recovery value. Now, if you remember that image we saw a little earlier of those homes that are now on site and being built out, this is what they are replacing. This is next door to that site. So this tar block, what we do is we do a pre-demolition audit. So what are the materials in here that can be reused, recycled or upscaled or used in the new buildings, and then we allow for additional time in the demolition program for the whole building to be soft stripped and reused then as much as possible as we go through the whole process. Then we really look at, obviously, supply chain integration. These are large schemes over a number of years, so there's potential to do a great deal of work around supply chain integration to maximize on our circular economy outputs. And then the last point here is deconstruction plans. So now when I get a pitch from an architect to design a building for me, I'm also asking them, how are we going to take that building apart? Show me how you've designed it in such a way that that building can come down in 50, 60, 80, 90 years from now. So in terms of practical delivery, these are the processes that we're thinking about. So end of life for existing buildings, like that tar block we just looked at. Looking at what products and components we're going to be using. How can they be reused? How can they be upscaled? Where do we get social economy benefits through the construction process itself? Then the most important bit, and the bit that gets overlooked, really, is the use stage. So these buildings in these neighbourhoods are going to be places to live, places that need to be maintained and adapted and upgraded for decades to come. So what are the decisions we make early doors that allow us to deliver and maintain and run these places with circular economy principles to the fore? And then we come full circle again to end of life to these buildings. Are they refurbished? Are they replaced? How do we design such a way to accommodate that? So touched on earlier, we're a very large organization, so we have particular strengths. We're buying a lot, we're commissioning a lot, we're replacing many components through the lifetime of these buildings. So in all our major procurements now, we ask questions about circular economy. They're scored, they're part of what determines who wins this work and who doesn't. So effectively, we're trying to shape the market to think beyond sort of traditional responses to sustainability, to be thinking much more along the lines of circularity. So we're using our spending power to allow us to do that. But the key to that is having a strong strategy. And we're not the only people who are working in this. I think Josephine has showed some excellent examples of other authorities and other bodies working around this. This document here is from the UK Green Building Council. I would recommend it to you. We've contributed to this, and it's a very useful, very practical guide. One of the important things we try to emphasize here is this is much more than just about sustainability. I think we're all used to seeing sustainability strategies as part of regeneration programs, housing, built environment. This involves different kind of thinking. We're right at the start of that. We're using our procurement strength to help drive that process along. From the industry's point of view, what they're looking for is proof of concept. Policy will help with that, and we're starting to see policy come forward, particularly here in London, that requires circular economy thinking. But what we really need to see it is in delivery, and that's what we're trying to do now through the regeneration programs that we run in Clarion. And then finally, this is where we're heading. We're hoping to try and use our scale and our economic strength to shift the market, to shift thinking, to shape the types of buildings we design, the pitches we get from design organizations, and more critically, how those places live and operate for decades to come, effectively moving from the linear economy that's been flagged up earlier. This is how built environment gets done, generally speaking. we recycle, but generally we're downcycling, as again has been pointed out before. What we're looking to try and do is to drive more circularity, much more circular thinking into the processes that we're engaged in. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for this testimony. Now, our next speaker is Arnau Gonzalez. He is a project manager and senior expert at the international energy consultancy firm Aiguasol. Since 2017, Arnau leads consultancy projects in the areas of renewable energy, sustainable energy, and circular economy. And now we'll talk about the circular indicators and methodology used in the work package 2 for HOUSEFUL Project. And now the floor is yours. You have 8 minutes. Just unmute your microphone. Maybe I can do it for you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I just shared my screen. I did and couldn't find the microphone thing. Thank you very much. Sorry for that, and thanks, Abdurrahim, for this kind of opportunity to share the work that we've been doing within the HOUSEFUL Project. First of all, I just want to highlight that this is a work in progress, just similar as Michel from Drive Zero Project explained. We are at point of developing a circular economy assessment methodology for the housing sector, but we are still working on how to better tackle this complex thing of circular economy in the built environment. Well, first of all, just I wanted to remind this a couple of definitions of circular economy. I'm almost sure that you're well aware of both of them. Just wanted to highlight that according to the MacArthur Foundation, which is foundation taking the lead on circular economy concept, they highlight these three concepts or principles that I put on this bullet points, which are the importance of design out waste and pollution. So there's something regarding the reduction of waste and pollution that it should be addressed in circular economy. Also, keeping products and materials in use, as you are well aware, and also regenerate natural systems. So in this case, we have a couple of things that are mixed together in this overall concept of circular economy. And also, I wanted to point out this definition from the European Parliament, which is more focused on business modeling, which are very important to not only have circularity from a theoretical perspective, but also having these business models that are that enable the actual implementation of circular economy principles is also kind of quite important aspect of circular economy. So as Daniel already explained, in HOUSEFUL we are working towards tackling these 5 pillars that Daniel already mentioned. We are developing solutions for the building construction sector in the materials, water, waste, and energy aspects, and also holistic solutions that somehow encompass all the previous ones, and want to also introduce social aspects and this overall methodology that we are presenting today. So we did kind of a similar work that the one presented by Michel. We developed a literature review on the current approaches of building circularity assessment, and we saw that most of them are based on materials assessment. I'm talking about methodologies for circularity assessment specifically, not levels, which is more a sustainability framework. And we thought that we do not only want to measure materials. Materials is the principal or the main aspect of building construction in terms of impacts, but also we want to work in our pillars, aligning also to the overall solutions developed in the HOUSEFUL project. So we are proposing an approach referring to, as I said, material resources, but also energy use, water use, social aspects, and from this holistic perspective, also the overall environmental impact and economic value or economic cost of the building. So this is fully aligned with levels framework that Josefina presented, and also we want to align this methodology with the current standards that address or somehow give guidance on the environmental or sustainability assessment of buildings from a life cycle perspective. So it's important because this is a very important part, because we are in circular economy is overall about doing or valorizing strategies to reduce material usage, but also energy use and water use, and these different natural resources are located in the value chain of the building construction in different parts. So we are going to find more savings on the operational stage for energy or water, but then for materials we're going to find them more located in the product stage. So we need to have this wide vision of the overall life cycle of the building if we want to fully address the degree of compliance of circular economy principles and aspects in the building construction sector. So how we are approaching this measurement of circular economy? First of all, we propose to measure the energy consumption and the degree or the rate of circular, let's say, and I'm putting in commas, no, because circular energy is not something that is clearly defined, but we aim to measure how much of the overall embodied energy within a building life cycle comes from renewable sources, but not only renewable sources, and that's why I'm putting circular energy here, because we also propose that, for example, if we are refurbishing a building and increasing the insulation of the overall skin of the building, then we are going to have a reduced energy consumption. So energy savings shall be also accounted as circular energy from our perspective. So this is our proposal here is to perform a flow analysis from an energy standpoint throughout all the building life cycle and measure the rate of the overall energy consumption that can be considered circular. Also with materials, I'm not going to take much time here because later my colleague Rachel from Turn 2, which is another panel from HOUSEFUL Project, will better explain our approach for the materials pillar. Also, we are performing a similar analysis from water perspective, so evaluating the rate of water that comes from cycled sources. Here, water is a circular resource from its nature, but what we understand as circular water here is the water that comes from cycled sources recovered, for example, green water or black water, rainwater, and so on. These are three approaches more or less similar for these three pillars to the suggested approach from Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is a flow analysis perspective. And now we are moving to other aspects which cannot be measured in that way. And we want to also valorize somehow value the social added value of our building construction. We understand that providing health and comfort, and in talking in levels terminology, is something that provides some social added value. You are providing comfort to people, more healthy people, and this is not only relates with energy consumption, that also relates with energy consumption, but more focused also with health aspects and the health of end occupants of the buildings. But also we want to valorize or value the companies that use local workforces and construction of the building, that prevents pollution during this construction and deconstruction activities, or big maintenances or refurbishments and so on. Also social fairness measures, producing or manufacturing products for building construction or renovation. And the last two aspects that we are including here are LCA and LCC indicators, but not in general terms, but in terms of how you are reducing the environmental impact with respect to the existing park of buildings, or with a similar building that is not including circular economy measures. Also in terms of economic value, and it's important to have this from our perspective. It's important to have these two indicators in reduction terms, because in this way we are going to have percentage indicators for all the 6 pillars that I just explained. This, as I said, this is a work in progress. We still don't have the exact values of these indicators for our pilots, for our demo sites buildings, but we are going to have them eventually in a couple of months, when we are starting to implement the solutions. But I wanted to show you how we are proposing to visualize or to plot the results of our methodological assessment, or circularity assessment, sorry. And as I said, these are not real values, but could be similar real values, because some of them come from baselines assessments, some of them. So we propose to have these different indicators plotted separately, and also in the left hand side you have this overall degree of circularity for the 6 pillars separately, and in the right hand side the same values, but broken down in the 4 life cycle stages of the building. So we can see where the most of the impact or the circularity is found, as I said before, in the different stages of the building. But
your time is over, so
okay, I'm going to just finish in a minute. This is my last slide. Well, but what we also saw is that these different indicators that we are showing are not comparable between them, because you can save energy, increasing the use of water, and so on. So we want to introduce here the importance of the location of the building that we are assessing, because if you are doing a building circularity assessment in, let's say, Southern Europe or Southern Spain, for example, for instance, the savings of water or the reusing of water is going to be more important than in Northern Europe, where there is plenty of water resources. So in this sense, we want to introduce some Eurostat indicators. In this case, all of them are Eurostat indicators, to somehow weigh the different importance of the different pillars in different locations. So through the energy dependency rate and the share of renewable energy in gross energy consumption, we can assess how stressed is a location in a country in terms of energy dependency and energy and consumption of fossil fuels for energy production, for example, and so on. So and in the end, aim at having this building circularity score that somehow will encompass the 6 pillars and weight the different importance of each of them to come up with a single value comparable between different locations and different buildings. So I'm sorry for taking a little bit of more of my time, and that's all.
Okay, thank you, Arnau. I hope you didn't take time from Rachel. So before we move to the Q&A session, I will give the floor to Rachel Luis. Rachel is a management consultant with more than 10 years experience in managing large and global change programs in the financial sector. She will present the material topic within the HOUSEFUL project that has been developed between 32 and ITEC. Please, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hey, can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, now yes.
Okay. Okay, so as already said, I'm part of the Turn 2 team. I have my colleagues Richard and Sabina also on the team to answer any questions later. I only got 5 minutes, so I'll try to explain what we're doing within these 5 minutes. Turn 2 usually partners up with, or very often partners up with Madaster, and the Madaster company is responsible for the generation of the material passports. So Madaster will come back in my story a lot of times. In order to determine the material circularity indicator, we've consolidated a lot of other approaches, including levels, including Ellen MacArthur, but also, for example, CV23, which is a big thing in the Netherlands. But for my presentation now, I focus on the Madaster circularity indicator to explain our way of thinking and our way of looking at circularity indicator. We do calculate circularity in 3 steps, starting with the first, where we look at the materials going in, and we check the percentage of cycles that are not virgin feedstock. So needless to say that we want as little virgin feedstock going in as possible.
Rachel, your presentation cannot be seen.
Okay. What do you see?
Nothing. It's
just a black screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I can open it for you. And
okay, that makes sense because I don't know why it's not sharing.
Okay, just 1 sec. Okay. So. Okay, can you see it now?
I see. Oh yeah, there. Can you go to the second slide? Yes. So as you see, the blue circle is where we consider the percentage of all material input from cycled sources, which is all of the sources except for the virgin feedstock. And as I said, you want as little virgin feedstock as possible. The second step is we measure the lifetime of the materials used in comparison to the industry average. So that's trying to increase the lifetime the materials are used. And then the third step, at the end of the building life cycle, we determine the material output to cycle batch, which are all but the so reuse, recycle, and you want to avoid landfill. Needless to say, you want to recycle on the highest level, so on the product or component level, rather than the recycled materials level. Then in the HOUSEFUL project, we have 4 demo sites for which we create a material passport. We team up with one of the partners called ITEC, and they work with the demo teams to generate all the needed information, and they generate a BIM model, which is then uploaded in Madaster. And then once that's uploaded, we work together with ITEC to enrich the data so we get the best results. Doing so has a couple of things why we think it's important. First of all, the first step is giving materials an identity for everybody to know what material is located where in the building. And once you do so, there's the opportunity to determine, for example, the embedded carbon, the toxicity. It gives you a lot of advantages. But knowing the materials, we also want to give the materials a financial value, because that will be an important incentive. Important incentive for building owners or anybody within the building life cycle to increase circularity. And as you also can see in the picture, you can also use it for changing the valuation to the value of the material instead of to 0. So that's our thought on why giving the materials a financial value is very important. And then the last fact, as we already over time, I don't think it's that important, but it gives reason or opportunities over the building life cycle of why we need to start registering materials used and increasing circularity. That was it.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel, for this presentation. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's the time for the Q&A session. This session will be moderated by Sébastien Garnier, Innovation and Project Manager at Housing Europe. And before this, I would like to particularly thank Dara Turnbull, our research coordinator, for managing the questions for the session. I will give now the floor to Sébastien.
Yes, thank you, Abdul. I hope you can all hear me. Okay, so great. That's a lot of material to digest. Very interesting presentations up to now. We received already a couple of questions. So one of the questions that was put on the chat box, and I invite you to continue put questions in there, of course, was to Rachel. So for the last presentation, what is your view on the MCI calculation based on embodied energy and embodied CO2 instead of mass? Can you share your views on that, Rachel, with us, please?
And can I just answer that question? I'm Sabine from the Turn 2 team.
Yes, of course. Okay, go ahead.
I just reacted to the question of Michiel. We need both. I think in terms of the mass, we need it for knowing for the reuse of materials, and we need at the same time to manage them because of the embodied energy they contain. But I think they are both very, very important indicators.
Thank you very much, Sabine. Then there is another question to Paul Quinn from Clarion. Someone asked, what is exactly your motivation to do this? What are your objectives? Are there any benefits for you or the others in the chain as you see it? That's the first question. And then there is a second question for you as well, Paul. Is the circularity in the renovations project, how do you save on the whole life carbon? Are there any specific measures, any specific hotspots you focus on for the renovation part?
Okay, so then the first point really is it stems from who we are. We are a social landlord, and unlike a house builder, you know, in the world I'm working in, most of the homes that get built in the UK are built by house builders, and they're really interested in the scheme as long as up to the point where they sell it and they move on. Difference here is everything that we build, we're likely to still be responsible for 50, 60, 70 years from now. I'm working on a refurbishment project, which I'll come to in a moment, which was built in 1913 for the same organization that I work for now, and we've owned it and managed it and delivered it as social housing all that time, and now I'm just about to embark on a big refurbishment program. So the impetus for us comes from the fact that we are a responsible landlord. We're very keen to deliver homes and neighbourhoods that ensure people have long, healthy lives, and that we build homes that we're likely to still be responsible for managing and maintaining decades from now. So the decisions we make now about materiality or systems or scale and massing, if we get them wrong, then we still have to sort them out. So we might as well try and get those things right from the start. And circular economy is part now of our thinking in terms of making those decisions. As I sort of alluded to in my slides, it's early days for us. You know, the circular economy is a relatively new term. The translation from it from theory into practice is even more recent. So we're just starting to build it into sort of scale now. So we have quite a long way to go on it. Just in terms of refurbishment, it's a very good question. The principles are broadly the same for us. It's more for me about trying to get particularly design teams, structural engineers, facilities managers to be thinking early doors about what it is we're trying to do with these buildings, to involve them in some of that early decision making and get them thinking collectively. Whether it's new build or whether it is refurbishment, it's, to me, you know, as I mentioned at the start, you guys probably know very much more than me about the technicality of this. What I'm trying to ensure is that the principles are embedded in every aspect of the project from the outset.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Paul, for that. And so apparently the sustainable long-term involvement of social housing organizations goes right hand in hand actually with the whole long-term perspective of a circular economy. So it is indeed in your DNA. That's what it sounds like. In fact, I have another question for Josefina Lindblom from DG Environment from the European Commission. We focused on the previous webinar on how it is important to combine energy efficiency measures and try to include circular measures and approaches to make use of this momentum now. And looking at the promised renovation wave, what would be the best approach in terms of policies and funding for you, and how will, for instance, levels play a role in this? You were talking about perhaps some future regulation. What do you think about that, Josefina?
Yes, thank you. Yes, indeed, the renovation wave is coming up. It's supposed to be published in September, sorry, and it is being drafted as we. These are colleagues at DG Enner who are responsible for this work, but they are reaching out broadly within the Commission, and their aim of making it in general a sustainable approach. We believe that circularity will be key in that regard. There are many ways of taking. To make sure that circularity works hand in hand with energy efficiency. Perhaps just to give some examples of when it doesn't work. We hear from demolition companies that for years now, when they are taking down buildings which have been renovated for energy efficiency purposes in the couple of decades.
Sorry, Josefina, I cannot hear you very well sometimes. Can you maybe put a mic closer to your mouth? Maybe that helps.
Yeah, it is super close. I have this headset on, so I don't think I can make it any closer. Sorry. Okay, someone says that Seb, you must mute your phone, but I don't know if that is the issue. Do you hear me now? Yeah, I see some nodding heads. So just to say that, for example, we see from, or we hear from demolition companies that when they now take down buildings which have been renovated for energy efficiency purposes previously, it is very difficult for them to sort out different waste streams because insulation has been glued to the concrete, for example. It's just an example. But that means that it's actually an increasing number of demolition waste that ends up in landfill because of that. And that's not an old problem, which we have left now. This is still happening, of course. We often see how perhaps too much material and hence too much carbon then is being put into a building to make it more energy efficient. But there is an enormous sort of carbon spike at the beginning of a project because you invest in carbon, let's say. So you're never going to get that carbon back, even if you improve your building a tiny bit more in terms of energy efficiency. So it is about that, getting that balance, right? And we think that there are many things which needs to be, I mean, that becomes more complicated because you need to have more things in your head at the same time, and that's not obvious. Energy efficiency alone can be complicated already, and now we're asking projects to think about something even more. I think it will be important. You asked about policy, and I think it will be very important for policymakers to make sure that they make it so they can provide whether it's guidance, whether it's databases, whatever it is that makes it easier for projects to take those aspects into account in a more simple way, because we cannot expect projects to start to do LCAs on each and every project. I think we have to see for different kinds of, if we talk about renovation projects, then what are the typical hotspots? And this will vary. This will depend on where you are in Europe, what kind of building it is, when it was built, what materials are in place or have been used. But I think we need to break it down and come up with some straightforward guidance of what to look out for. I also think that this is something that member states very much have to lift on their national markets, and I believe that the Commission should be supportive there. And I think there are different ways where we can support member states in this work, whether it is on, as I said, set up projects to see what are the key aspects to look at. How can we support the member states in developing core indicators, for example? Because I do think that it is helpful if it is being done in the same way, more or less. But there are also research projects which we should conduct, I think. Just before I let hold of the microphone, I want to mention a very interesting French project where they are looking at renovation and life cycle. And they've been able to at least initially start to quantify some of the benefits and savings. And they see indicative numbers, that is, so don't quote me on that, but I think it's very interesting as a guidance. They see that as they are planning to step up renovation, as I think we are doing all over Europe, right? As they are planning to step up renovation in the coming years, they think that they will very soon have almost double the amount of embodied carbon going into renovation projects than on new build projects, on the macro level, of course, not on project level, but on the macro level. And so it shows that life cycle and circularity is not just something that we can sort of play around with for some very extra fancy projects of new build. It is really something which we cannot afford not to look at, I think. But it has to be done in a simpler way.
Thank you very much, Josefina, for that. And so indeed, it confirms that the work that is being done currently in the new builds to assess the circularity in the new builds of the residential sector, which we are talking about now. But as well in this big renovation wave will be very important. That's exactly where the two projects that have been presented today, so the HOUSEFUL project and the Drive Zero project, are focusing on. I think we had I'm now going into the conclusions, but actually your intervention, Josefina, was.
Can I just say something more?
Yes, of course.
I just wanted to say that, of course, the renovation wave, it's a short time frame now to finish that. But I'm aware of that there will be a public consultation coming out on this very soon. So I think it would be great if professionals with the knowledge that we've heard today, if they take an interest and an answer to this public consultation. It's not out yet, but it's going to be, I think it's just a matter of a few weeks maybe. So yeah, please keep your eyes open for that public consultation.
So indeed, and that gives me the opportunity now to also mention a few conclusions, practical conclusions, I have to say. So first of all, please check the websites of those two projects. The houseful.eu is for the HOUSEFUL project, and then the Drive Zero project is also a Horizon 2020 project. These conversations that we are having now, we can continue them online through the forum that we have set up especially for this. It's a forum that you can find on our Housing Evolutions Hub. So you can find it on www.housingevolutions.eu. If you go to the contact form there, you will be able to send us a very short, just let us know, I want to register, and you will have access to the forum. And there is a specific part there that is dedicated to circularity. It's part of the HOUSEFUL work, this as well. It's called the Collaborative Community of Housing Experts on Circular Economy. So we can continue these discussions and these exchanges, and especially on methodologies on this forum. Of course, we will make all the PowerPoints available. We will also publish a short video of this webinar there. It's also a space indeed where we can inform the participants of these kind of public consultations, so this kind of information is shared there as well, so we can make people aware of that. I will also remind the requests from the Drive Zero project. They are looking and developing the different kind of methodologies and looking for examples that are being used out there. So this as well can be shared with them through the same forum. And I think that's for the practical side. For me, it was very, very interesting to listen to all the different contributions from different levels. We've been looking at the European level, the more macro level. We've been hearing from researchers what they're working on. We've been looking at very practical implementations done at Clarions. So I want to thank really all the speakers, Danielle, Josefina, Michiel, Paul, Arno, and Rachel. Thank you very much, and Josefina, of course. And I want to conclude this. Thank you to all the participants, and thank you to the Housing Europe team. Abderrahim, great job. As always, Dara as well, thank you for your support. And I hope that you can continue to follow our work, and because there will be more of these kind of webinars organized on different topics around circular economy in the housing sector. So thank you very much for attending, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Thank you.